Sparkly salutations. I've said this before, but for anyone who doesn't know, almost all of my makeup is drugstore, and most of the stuff that isn't drugstore was at least purchased at a drugstore-ish price. Obviously, I think that makeup doesn't need to be expensive in order to be fantastic, but sometimes it seems like beauty influencers have a bias against inexpensive products, and I wanted to make a video talking about that. This video isn't meant to be about anyone specific or any makeup channels that focus on high-end makeup, because some people simply prefer more expensive things for one reason or another. I'm not trying to say that you're a snob if you like expensive makeup. I want to talk about the kind of people who act like whatever you find in a Target is automatically going to be less good than products you would find in a Sephora. You are a makeup snob if you act like drugstore makeup as a whole is patchy, skin-irritating garbage. Some drugstore products are legitimately low quality and patchy, but so are some more expensive products, so it's not just a drugstore thing. One of the things that bothers me when I'm watching a makeup video is when the person says, "Wow, this inexpensive thing is actually really good," as if they're surprised about it. I know when things are super cheap, it's natural to question their quality a little bit, but I feel like that makes more sense for things like electronics or furniture or hotels than it does for makeup, since most makeup isn't really that expensive to produce. Acting like it's a shock that a $3 lip gloss does its job well kind of makes me wonder if they think that the only way to get your makeup to look good is to shell out for the pricey stuff. If drugstore makeup was all garbage, then those brands would be struggling or getting phased out and not continuing to thrive and grow. Another thing I've seen sometimes is when they're trying out a new product like a foundation or a primer, they'll scrutinize the ingredients list and freak out if there's anything they can't pronounce. Cyclopentasiloxane? I don't know anything about cosmetic chemistry, but I am scared. Pray for my skin. If you gave them that exact same product in the bottle of a high-end brand, do you think they'd still be doing that? I feel like the answer is usually no, unless they were looking through the ingredients list so they could excitedly tell you that it has real gold flakes that do absolutely nothing. Whenever someone panics about a 4-syllable ingredient and jokes about, "Oh no, my poor skin, what's it gonna have to deal with here?" I immediately lose interest in the video. I'm not going to take advice about what I should or shouldn't put on my face from anyone who gets all worked up and overreacts about chemicals in their products. Natural does not mean good, synthetic does not mean bad, and everything is chemicals. Something that's slightly less bothersome is calling something good for the price when what they really mean is good. To me, good for the price means something that is cheap and mostly fine but has a couple of drawbacks. An example of that would be these Wet n Wild lipstick tubes that are only $2 or $3, I think, which are fine unless the really cheap plastic cap breaks and then you have to tape it together and hope that the lid will stay on. This Essence lip balm was $2.50, and I would call this good for the price because the tube is flimsy as heck and the pineapple smell is a little off, but overall it functions and it smells mostly like pineapple and it's moisturizing. I like it, but I wouldn't trust it to survive in my purse, you know? So to me, those two things qualify as good for the price instead of just outright good, because the tubes are liable to fall apart. On the other hand, if I were talking about this Wet n Wild eyeshadow quad or any of my $1 or $3 e.l.f. brushes, I wouldn't say they're good for the price because that would be selling them short. They're great quality and they're budget friendly, not great quality considering that they're budget friendly. If you're doing a review of an inexpensive product and it performs well, you can just say that. This doesn't seem to happen as often as it used to, but I've seen YouTubers do videos where they're only supposed to use makeup products that are under a certain price. The full face of drugstore makeup challenge, or the nothing over $10 challenge, or whatever else they would call it. It seems a little strange to make a challenge out of something that a lot of people just do on a daily basis. Some people treated those challenges of using only affordable products the same way they did the only using kids makeup or liquid lipsticks or highlighters challenge videos, in that they expected their results to be subpar. Just because some of us looked like a mess when we were first starting out, that doesn't mean that everyone who buys their makeup at Walmart is doomed to the same fate. It is entirely possible to use nothing but inexpensive products and still look fine. There are plenty of duds in the drugstore, to be sure, but Sephora is not immune to bad products just because their prices are higher. You can find great and awful products at all price points. Honestly, I think of it like generic store-brand foods versus the name-brand versions. Some expensive makeup is genuinely better than the cheaper counterparts. Sometimes there's basically no difference aside from packaging, and frequently I end up sticking with the cheap stuff. Real cornflakes taste gross to me, but the generic version from Fred Meyer is really good. I bought some generic Reese's Puffs recently, and it turns out those are terrible and do not taste like actual Reese's Puffs at all. I have this Tarte mascara that I bought when there was a really good deal going. I think this is usually $23, but I bought this and also a mini blush and mini lip gloss for $10, and there was free shipping, and it was, that's the only reason I bought it. And it's not noticeably greater than any of the CoverGirl mascaras I've ever tried, so I don't feel a need to buy it again. You just have to look up reviews and try things and see what you like. Everyone has their own preferences, and bodies are weird and just react differently to things sometimes, so every product out there is going to have at least some percentage of people who wouldn't like it for one reason or another. The trouble is that sometimes people will make a blanket statement like, oh, drugstore foundations break me out, or drugstore eyeshadows aren't pigmented. I realize that being as light as I am, it's going to be a lot easier for me to get eyeshadows to show up than it is for people of color, which is unfortunate. But there are still options out there that are inexpensive and have enough pigment to look beautiful on any skin tone. There are definitely understandable reasons for wanting to buy more expensive makeup instead of sticking to a drugstore. Back before the plague, you could go into a Sephora to swatch the testers and even get a sample of something, and that was a really helpful thing to be able to do, especially for things like foundation. Drugstore products don't always have testers available in Ulta or whatever store is near you, so there's a lot more guesswork involved usually. Some people like the look and the feel of the fancier packaging, and they wouldn't enjoy makeup as much if it all came in Wet n Wild style plastic. If you love high-end makeup and it fits within your budget, then great. Just as I think people shouldn't be judged for wanting to use more inexpensive makeup products, I do try not to judge people who prefer the more extravagant options. I will say though, I feel like the normalization and popularity of higher-end brands has kind of warped some people's perception of what a reasonable price is for makeup. Pat McGrath's newest palette is $78, which is considerably less than her palettes usually are, but that's still $78, which is a lot of money. It's become normal to pay $30 for a blush or over $20 for a tube of lipstick, and factor in things like Afterpay that encourage you to buy now, pay later, and the pressure that young people tend to feel to have the right products to become popular, and I'm a bit worried. Back when I was a teenager, it seemed like all of the cool, popular girls had this one specific North Face jacket. I remember wondering if I would feel less like an ugly duckling if I also had one of these jackets, but they were fairly expensive and my parents steered me towards a Columbia option instead. It was basically the exact same jacket, just at a reasonable price and without the North Face logo on it. Looking back, I'm glad my parents didn't give in and buy me the expensive jacket because no piece of clothing is ever going to make me fit in and become popular, so it would have been a waste of money. If the magical item that would have somehow made me less awkward, dorky, and bad at human interaction had been something like a MAC lipstick or an Urban Decay eyeliner or some other beauty product I could try to casually pull out in the middle of class, then I might have ended up putting money towards that fruitless attempt to be cool because it wouldn't have been so much of a big expense all at once. Don't mind me, classmates. I'm just applying my $19 MAC lipstick. Am I cool yet? The North Face jacket stuff was all happening before Instagram even existed. So how much worse is it now? I mean, how many teenagers do you think have asked their parents for the Versala unicorn drops or even spent $54 of their own money on it because they've seen so many beautiful people dribble it onto their faces on Instagram? There's also a cynical part of my brain that wonders how much sunk cost fallacy comes into play. If you spend $50 or even more on an eyeshadow palette that ends up being, yeah, okay, then will your brain try to convince you that it was somehow worth your money so that you don't feel like it was a waste? Is a $28 lip balm actually 7 times as good as a $4 lip balm would be, or does it just feel that way because of the luxurious rose gold tube and the fact that it says NARS on it? Obviously, if the packaging is a significant part of what makes makeup enjoyable to you, then that's a valid reason for wanting something like a MAC lip gloss instead of a NYX butter gloss. If you're looking at it from purely a performance standpoint, then you don't want to let the fancier packaging trick you into thinking that that one is better than the one that's just as good but doesn't look as nice. Nice packaging isn't exclusively an expensive brand thing though, because, I mean, Maybelline has nice lipsticks, and L'Oreal has some nice lipsticks. Look at that. And Wet n Wild's new lipsticks kind of look like the Pat McGrath ones, but less tacky in my opinion. I'm sorry, I know Pat McGrath is like the epitome of luxury, but the giant lips on the tubes just are kind of weird, so this is a smaller version that I think looks better. I'm sorry. And there's also, I mean, Lancome Lip Smacker. They're pretty much the same, except this one smells like strawberry Fanta. And then over here we have Dose of Colors lip gloss and Wet n Wild liquid catsuit lines. That's the same tube. Anyway, I just wanted to share my thoughts on this subject because everyone has their own feelings about how much they want to spend on makeup, and that's fine. As long as you're being financially responsible and not supporting a terrible human being, then Do what you want to, and don't be concerned about what other people will think about the products you're using. Once it's on your face, there's not really any good way for people to tell what it is that you've used anyway, so it really doesn't matter. Let's all just be nice to each other, okay? There's enough hatred in this world already, and we don't need to add to it. So stay safe and keep following COVID guidelines so that we can eventually get out of this mess.